health centers that you started, that you founded and are
Mm-hmm.
still operating now with a team. So I wonder if you could take me through a little bit. So what was your thought process, and what was that kind of that moment when you decided, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna start Executive Health Center, and we'll kind of see how it goes and really focus on holistic health, precision medicine, and anti-aging as well. And how has that kind of
Mm-hmm.
evolved over time?
So the first piece was being in that family practice. And I say, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to do this. And if you want to change your career around, you can't be good at anything and you don't have the knowledge or the information to be able to figure out how to change the direction. So I guess in some weird way, the good news was I never entered into the obstetrics and gynecology residency. I was doing my internship in surgical internship. So I then didn't do that. So because I didn't do that, I guess there was an excuse to go back to school, and I decided, with some nudging from some professors, to do something completely different, because public health was, to me, not enough. And so I ended up being nudged to look at the business school, and I did that. And that teaches you a different framework of how to look at things, just like when you're an engineer, to have a different framework of looking at things. So I came out to do a practice on the side, actually, with some of my classmates on laser refractive surgery, and opened up a clinic there. That got sold, and then they all looked at each other, and we were all like, what do we do next? And we thought, there's enough baby boomers who are interested in wellness, because that was the boom around menopause. So the baby boomers are now in their late 60s. And that time, when I was like 20 years ago, they were in their 40s, and everybody was getting hot flashes and night sweats. And they're like, I'm not taking this anymore. There's no way. And I ended up starting something with a bunch of people, and it ended up being in the hospital front lobby of a very proactive, forward-thinking CEO who came from Vancouver to Mississauga. And we ended up in the front lobby of the Mississauga Hospital, which is now Trillium Health Partners, Mississauga site. And we were literally across the hall from Tim Hortons. So for all of you who are not Canadian, what would the equivalent of that? Dunkin' Donuts?
Yeah.
Starbucks of today, right? Starbucks of today. And there we were. We decided that we had a medical doctor, which is myself, taking care of menopausal women to offer them hormone replacement therapy, with a naturopathic doctor who would offer them supplements, so a non-prescription alternative, and a nutritionist, and an esthetician to help with aging skin, and a massage therapist. So it was an integrated health clinic in about 1,000 feet at the front lobby of a major hospital in a subdivision in Canada. We're the first of its kind. So we opened 2 or 3 more of these clinics, and one of them literally had the dermatology and the plastic surgeons in it. So we thought we would merge people from one spectrum of being anti-aging from a medical perspective to anti-aging from a surgical perspective, and put everybody in one building. Well, that was 1990-ish. And the people who liked the medical anti-aging was looking at people who was just had bandages come off of the surgical, and I thought it would look like, I guess, today's philosophy, given it's today, of here's the Democrats and here's the Republicans. And it did not mix. And I took care of this part, the surgeon took care of that part, and we went on our own way because it just didn't happened. So that's why that happened to be the medical side. And that's the Executive Health Center for today. Now we're into the baby boomers in their 60s and people, their children who are now in their 40s and 50s. And all of us are eating organic and feel nothing wrong. So that's the organic side, and feel nothing wrong to put a little Botox in your, up here and fillers on your lips to make them poofy, and that's okay. And now they're going, why can't you just put it all in one building? So that's what happens with Bespoke Wellness Club. And the Four Seasons is a client of mine, and we also have other friends and mutual professional colleagues. And next thing you know, they're like, no, you come in here and do one office is going to do medical wellness, and the other side you're going to bring a plastic surgeon to do Botox and cosmetic consultation. And in the middle of the bubble is areas that I have been involved in, obviously, from the first round of skincare. But now I feel like of all the things I learned in the precision medicine world, it's now time to put it into the beauty world. It's behind. You can do precision beauty because you know the genetics. You have actives that you can put into serums to know exactly what you need for your skin based on your genetics, and doing testing around your hormones and nutrient levels. So now you're really offering beauty from within. So it's just, we did this 20 years too early, and now it's so natural. Like, what's wrong with you? Why can't we both do both? So we're truly integrative, truly East meets West over here. And here is like beauty and anti-aging meets tradition. And then there's the technology and the science to go with it. So I'm having a very good time to go, here we go. What's old is new again. What's new is old.
Do you feel vindicated in any way? Do you feel like
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely, Victoria? This is like, really. We've been at this for 20 years, and now it's new, it's trendy. We're the clinic in Toronto to watch before COVID hit. We were about to launch during the week of TIFF. You know that little annual music film festival in Canada? And then it happened, and I go, no. Move in. I go, what do you mean move in? It's no TIFF, there's COVID. They go, no, we're here for the long run. So in we went. And as of today, we can't go because anything that requires us to take this off to do treatments of the skin, because now we're using skin treatments that are really personalized, we can't do them right now because we're in stage 2 restrictions in Toronto. Mm-hmm. But we're here for the long run. We're here to help them out.
So I just wanted to clarify too, was this the Bespoke Wellness Club? Because that just launched, was supposed to launch in September, just this past September?
Oh, we did. We launched September the 18th. And then we didn't even get to October the 18th and we got closed.
For the best, you think?
Oh, you can't control what's going on with COVID. COVID runs our lives, and you just go with the flow. Like, you can't fight this thing. It happened because everybody feels that it's not going to happen to them. So everybody else can wear a mask. And so if most people wear a mask, it's okay, then I don't need to wear a mask. And if most people social distance, I don't need to social distance, and I'll be okay. So we have to get away from being individualized to a collective agreement that we're all in it for each other, and we have to help each other through this. So I'm sitting back, Dorian and I'm on and off on CBC nowadays, and City TV and CP24 in Toronto, and they asked me, why are we getting higher and higher numbers? Because the first round, it was very hotspot specific in very specific institutions or areas. And over the summer, it became seeded in the community. And so now we're all inside, and then the kids have gone back to school, and boom. There you go, spontaneous combustion of the virus. So that's how we all got into wave 2.
Back on the Executive Health Center that you founded and are still seeing patients in. So I had a chance to go on the website. The website's fantastic. For anybody watching this, highly recommend checking it out. It just has a lot of very clear and informative pages on it that just explain what the process is for applying really this idea of approaching health from a holistic and kind of personalized approach. So you can find a lot of this information on the website directly. But I wonder just if we can get into it a little bit here. So if a new patient is going into the center, what's the approach that you take? What are the key steps, if you will, of the intake and how you start a program?
Right. So the intake is the interview, and the interview has to do with helping people understand clearly if they have goals and concerns. And if there's goals and concerns that I can't address from the way I practice, then we just kind of have a nice conversation and everybody goes their own way. So that's the first place to start. So I'm not a good doctor here to help you when you're in the middle of a stage 4 cancer and asking me for help. That's not the type of doctor I am. I don't do that work. But I say when you finish having your chemo and you are on your way to recovery, then that's where I pick up. So we start with an initial consultation to make sure that we are equal in understanding of what the expectations are of each other. And once we have that, the second part is to design the health program. Certainly we have some basic standard protocols, but how far we layer the precision diagnostics will determine how deep we go. And that is really a personal decision. Some of my clients over the years have said, I'll do everything, but I don't want to do my genetics. I don't want to know. And I think that still applies, but not as much now, because I don't think people find it as scary, given that 23andMe, so many people have now talked about it. It just seems acceptable to talk about genetics testing. It's like, I guess now 20 years ago, when we first started doing some disease risk genetics before something called 23andMe even showed up, people would say to me, I don't want to know when I'm going to die. I go, well, I can't tell you when you're going to die based on your genetics. Well, I don't know. I don't want to know if I'm going to get cancer. Aside from some genetics like BRCA, it's still not 100%. There's only very few genes like Huntington's. Chorea is one of those kinds of genes that if you have it, you're pretty well going to get it. But that's not what genetics can be. Genetics can be as simple as what we just talked about at the very beginning of your discussion with me around vitamin D. It can be as helpful to understand whether you are more predisposed to losing weight, doing cardio and or weight, or just do cardio, whether or not you're more predisposed to losing weight by eating a low-carb diet or a high-protein diet. These are really lovely things to know. And certainly, there are disease risk factors, and you want to address them earlier than later. So that's the genetics part. But then you can also measure your nutrients. You can measure every vitamin, mineral, organic, amino, and fatty acids so that you can see how your diet's not enough to meet certain needs of your full complement of nutrition. There's a whole world around food sensitivities and food intolerances, which I strongly believe is important, especially when you have a high antibody load against certain foods. It just means that your body has made a mistake against a certain food, and you're constantly mounting an accidental immune response. So we don't need that during a time when your immune system needs to be strong as you can so that you can beat COVID if you ever got it. Or you can now measure your neurotransmitters, which are your brain chemicals, to help you understand why you might be more prone to anxiety or depression or obsessive compulsive disorder. Looking at your hormones, such as your cortisol, your growth hormone, those are your metabolic hormones. They can explain sometimes why you are always tired or can't lose weight. And certainly we touched upon at the very beginning the estrogen and the testosterone, the progesterone, these were called sex steroid hormones. They're still important to know. So those are kind of well-rounded things in addition to, are you pre-diabetic? Are you diabetic? Do you have cholesterol issues? Do you have inflammation issues? And how's your kidneys? And how's your liver and your pancreas? Those things are all necessarily all things that you should still do. So I guess that's how you have to kind of plan it out based on what the patient needs or wants.
I would also emphasize or re-emphasize that point too, that the scariness behind genetic testing, even if it's testing your entire genome, getting your whole genome sequence, it's work that is coming out of a lot of institutions, but it's we're not always talking about the worst case kind of scenarios. Like people think that, like, I'm gonna know, like you said, when I'm gonna die or exactly what disease I'm gonna have or some of these things. So there's a little bit of merit to that in some extreme and rare cases, but for the most part, what we know about a lot of chronic diseases now is that they're multifactorial. There's so many different components that affect the course of those diseases, and it's the same thing with like your lifespan too. It's not a single factor; it's a lot of different things. So your genetics isn't predictive in that sense. It's meant to inform some what we call gently risk factors, and other times it can help tell you something about your protective factors that can actually help your health.
Right.
So the education piece around that, I think, is extremely important. They would probably need to know a lot more about that and spread out to the general population. And one of the big components in EHC is that you're using they're evidence-based precision diagnostic tests. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit to that, and how does that get incorporated into a patient's care? There's something called Health in a Box.
Right. So all those tests that I spoke to you about is probably a good 10 solid years of procurement. And we've come to the conclusion that there's certain tests that patients really like to learn about themselves. And I think the two most popular ones I'm going to tell you right now are understanding their food sensitivities, because when you have a food sensitivity, we generally will see people with chronic rash like eczema, because your body's trying to flush it out and reacting to something. Gas and bloating, headaches, aches and pains. So when people find out they actually do have a significant food sensitivity to one or two things, they cut it out of their diet. And most commonly, unfortunately, is dairy and wheat. And when you know which one it is, you get it out and you feel a lot better. So why wouldn't you want to know, right? The other one is whether or not you're burned out or overstressed. And that is your cortisol, your stress response hormone. And that is something you can test simply with saliva testing. And you can build something what we call a cortisol curve. So if it's flat, it means that you're burned out. If it spikes and then comes down, it means that you really are stressed, and then you don't have enough gas in the tank to get through the day. So we constantly get asked, how can we do this in a mass scale? And that was a question that was posed to me by many of my clients who are executives, say, how do you get this down to the team member level, like to offer to our employees? Because we can't have you calling on each of them, asking them the same questions, coaching them. Is there another way? So we kind of broke up the different sections to our offering of our testing. And so the patient gets the option of understanding what they want to test for because they're worried about it, and take it a little piece at a time rather than all of it at one shot. So it becomes more tangible. So we call it Health in a Box because it allows you to do the testing at home and get the results online, and to review the results through something like a Zoom platform, which pre-COVID was really, now it's like, okay, well, let's just do Zoom, but you know what, do you mind, we don't want to do Zoom, can I just do a call? That's also fine.
So the center, this is the thing that really caught my attention. It's very proactive. And in the same way that you practice a lot of preventive care, the center itself is also sort of based on this kind of idea, this philosophy, this approach of let's figure out what the best tests are and how do we actually incorporate, as long as they're evidence-based, kind of FDA-approved tests, how do we incorporate them, and how do we push that boundary with everything, not just precision diagnostics, virtual care as well, and the type of test that you actually incorporate and how you deliver it. So I found that to be positive and, again, very refreshing, because you don't see that very often. It really is a unique model of care.
Thank you. Well, before I went to become the Chief Wellness Officer at TELUS, it was something I was creating, and that's why I ended up at TELUS trying to help them create it. I'm sure if I was working there at the time at TELUS, and then COVID hit, I think we'd be launching all of this stuff now. But I was there before COVID hit, and I left about 2-3 years ago because they couldn't see consumer adoption. And I'll tell you the other issue, that it takes 3 components to create Health in a Box. And now I'm wearing my business hat, not the medical hat. So certainly from the medical side, the consumer wants to know more about themselves. Okay, that's good. They also want to be able to do it at home. Got it. So now we've got the technology from the labs to do it. Now here's the problem. It's not just in-time testing. And I think people now understand this. Like, why can't I get a rapid COVID test? Why do I have to ship it out? Why? And in Canada, it's like, why does it take 5 days? Why is it taking so long? Well, if you were 20 years ago, you would get your COVID test a month later back. So we're making progress. But on the other hand, we have these rapid antigen tests. And because there's no demand in the market significantly enough, these types of tests can be, in theory, from a science technology perspective, done at home, and you get instantaneous results. There were some companies that were starting to do that, and then they pivoted to COVID. So you could get, theoretically, your vitamin D levels at home. You could get your estrogen and testosterone levels at home. So that's one barrier to entry. And in Canada, where I work and where our business is, all of our tests are sent to the United States in labs that are FDA approved, CLIA approved, in the US. Not one Canadian company offers that. That's a business discussion. And then in order for the consumer to get that result back, what are you going to do? Mail it to them? Fax it to them? Send it to them through their email, which is not secure. So now you need to have an ecosystem, which I know you want to talk about what a patient health record is versus an electronic medical record. And the whole COVID thing is now pushing that up to the forefront. So that you as Dorian and me as a doctor to you can see the report with you now because of Zoom. But then you'll say, well, now can you give me an action plan? That patient health record allows us to have a continuous conversation with other practitioners to say, great, Dorian, like, I've now reviewed this, but you should probably work with our nutritionist. And that nutritionist doesn't have to go, Dorian, can you email me your results? It's all in one patient record. So it's a central depository where the patient's in the center of it and all the healthcare practitioners can access it if Dorian wants them to. So that's really why I think that's a big piece I learned as Chief Wellness Officer, that you may have an electronic medical record, which we call EMR, and that is a medical file for the doctor to write down his notes from a medical legal perspective. That is not a user-friendly document or platform that allows Dorian to want to share it with his sister or his wife, or to talk plain language. So it's a different platform, it's a different format. So I'm looking forward to a day when a patient health record and a electronic medical record in a doctor's office looks the same way. So I'm trying to get it to look like that, because a patient should know. But I come to the conclusion it's okay. The patient shouldn't know what I'm writing about them. So that just stays as a private.
I'll tell you what, I find this point really interesting for an important practical reason, but also it gets back to the idea of you being a trailblazer, because both Canada and the US have guidelines, policies, position statements, relatively recent ones too, that are trying to put the patient at the center of care. And one of the ways to do that is to emphasize the need to use technology to allow that to happen. And so we get a lot of these, but in reality, I think a lot of the times there's a lag in the market between sort of what we think is a good idea from a policy perspective versus what actually happens. And at least on the Canadian side, you're doing it. It's like you've built the thing, and here's how it's actually going to work, and it actually is putting the patient at the center of care, helping to inform them, empowering them with information and actionable information. And that again, I think is yet another example of you being a trailblazer in the field. So props to you for putting that into action as well.
And still, you know what, the part that I teach new people coming in as the person that's working with me, she's thinking about doing her MBA, she's doing her master's in Bachelor in Science, and thinking about going to medical school, and then decide to put a hold on that and come out to work. So now I just want you to sit there and do electronic medical records. There's like different medical records around North America. They don't talk to each other. They have all different languages. And she spends a lot of time downloading a document, printing it out, PDFing it, then uploading it back up. It's like, see how much good time we're wasting of productivity? So those are the things I think still need to happen. And then we talk about large companies like Epic that runs a lot of systems. When they start to run the system, we're going to have the similar problem as it was a government-run system, that it's so clunky and you can't change it. And once you're on it, you're really stuck on it. So I think there's going to be problems on that front too, in terms of healthcare platforms.
A couple, and I've had a few conversations with some guests on this show. You might be interested to hear about them, but there are various companies that offer EMR services, EMR, EHR type services that are a lot more sort of aware of some of these challenges and are trying to do things a little bit differently. And they're relatively recent, and it's like you said, it's a lot of this push for these things is coming out of COVID being a problem, and a lot of problems surfacing because of COVID. And so that is an opportunity for a lot of these companies to kind of come out and innovate and raise money and raise funds to do the development, and to try to get into actual practices where they can kind of test and adjust and listen to feedback from providers and centers and that sort of thing. So there's some cool stuff happening, but it's pretty young. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.